want to bring in Zerlina Maxwell, host of Mornings with Zerlina on Sirius XM, and Michael Steele, former chairman of the RNC. He is the co-host of The Weekend here on MSNBC. So Zerlina, Vice President Harris discussed immigration yesterday. Senator J.D. Vance will visit the border tomorrow. What does this tell you about the role of this issue for both sides?
Well, look, I think that the vice president has been smart. There's a new video out, her campaign put out this week, that tackles the issue of immigration and talks about her work on the core causes of the so-called border crisis. And I think that this is the issue Republicans think that they can campaign and win on. But I think that they're wrong because the facts are actually on the vice president's side. She is correct to point out that it was Donald Trump who helped to kill the bipartisan border bill that was before the Congress. And she's right to point out that Donald Trump wanted to kill the bill just so he could have something to campaign on. So that's what you see J.D. Vance doing as he travels around the battleground states, because it's really all they've got.
And, Michael, this morning we heard from one of Vice President Harris's potential running mates, Arizona Senator Mark Kelly. Here's what he had to say about the issue of immigration. Listen to this.
We're a country of immigrants, and we need comprehensive immigration reform. Dreamers are as American as my own two kids and deserve a pathway to citizenship. So where this is a complicated issue, one thing is pretty basic, and that's that we had an agreement. We had the votes. And then Donald Trump wakes up one morning and sees that he does not want this problem solved. So he told Senate Republicans that they were not allowed to vote for it.
Michael, we've had so many discussions about this over the years. We're just thinking your thoughts on this issue. It's very interesting to see how the border bill is in and of itself being mentioned as on some sides as a magical pill to deal with all of the humanitarian issues that we've been seeing, and on the other side, that how does this issue possibly become something that both sides could agree on? It's not possible, is it?
No, it is possible because they had an agreement, and that's the point. I think Zerlina nailed it, that the evidence on this issue of immigration stands on the side of the vice president right now. Why? Because she can trot out the Republicans who were supportive of the bill. She can trot out the video of the author of the bill, the conservative Senator Lankford, who was on record saying, yeah, Donald Trump blew this up. Absent this, though, if we did not have this bill in place, you're absolutely right. This issue would be a very difficult one for the vice president to navigate. But she has a safe harbor because the administration, working with very conservative member of the United States Senate, crafted a bill, orchestrated the ground game behind it to get the votes not just in the Senate, but in the House. And Donald Trump killed it. So to trot out this now to say, hey, they're weak on immigration. She said, dude, we had a bill. You killed it. Tell us why you killed the bill. That would be my question to Donald Trump on that stage.
I mean, Michael, the answer he already gave, right? He said, I told them to kill that bill. Interesting, because that bill was, as you very keenly remind us, it was created in conjunction with the White House, yes, with some House and the senators, but that are extremely conservative in so many ways. Yeah. But like even senators like Padilla and others were against that bill.
Exactly.
It's just so odd.
It's Washington politics, my friend. And at the end of the day, it says a lot about the Biden administration's ability to navigate through that. Even given all the other political issues around Joe Biden, he was able to get some pretty big things done. And what I think the vice president will rightly lean into is that bipartisan nature, that their administration was one that was willing to sit down and negotiate. Republicans were not willing to do that when they had the House and the White House. And so here she can make a case not just on this issue of immigration, but on climate, on infrastructure, on a whole host of other things that I think will put the administration in good stead, but put her campaign in a better position to make a case that voters will go, at least we see the effort. What have you done, Donald Trump?
And Zerlina, meanwhile, what do you think the vice president needs from a running mate here?
Look, I think that she has a lot of good options on the table, and it's really somebody who's ready to be president on day one, as they say. Also somebody that she likes working with. I think that is probably an underappreciated aspect of this. But I also think you want to make sure that you don't make the same mistake that Donald Trump made, which is picking somebody that's going to be a drag on your side of the ticket. She needs to make sure to pick somebody that doesn't dampen some of this enthusiasm that we've seen over the course of the past week with the Democratic base. And so I think all of the options are strong. I have my favorite, but I don't think Governor Gretchen Whitmer is going to be the pick. Governor Gretchen Whitmer is my favorite. I like the all-female ticket. Let's take the all-female ticket up against the people who think that childish, cat-lady sociopaths are horrible for America.
Zerlina Maxwell and Michael Steele, I thank you both.
Zerlina's always run hard, my friend. She's always run hard. I love it.
Thank you both. Really appreciate it.